Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Thank you. Love that. But the moonbeams and the journey, and it's perfect for tonight, or any night, actually. I love that. Yeah. So thanks for being here. You might have noticed that I don't take up much space in the physical realm. I'm a 5'3" bantamweight. A bantam is a small chicken, in case you ever wondered what that was. But when I have a mystical experience, I feel expansive. In a mystical experience, the limits and the constraints and the boundaries fall away, and I feel just this enhanced sense of possibility, and I want that for everyone. So studies show that most Americans have experienced a mystical or a transcendent time in their life, but we don't commonly talk about that. So why not? Why don't, in common everyday life, why don't we talk about our mystical transcendent experiences? Well, once upon a time, there was a time that science and spirituality were not separated. They were not divided. They were connected, and humans didn't see these aspects of life as separate from each other. Life involved principles from the divine. But during the scientific revolution in the 1600s, and then we had the Age of Enlightenment in the 1700s and the 1800s, science and religion were separated so that people started studying one or the other. They didn't study both anymore. So the paths diverged, and the scientists didn't meddle in the realm of spirituality and vice versa. But it also meant that the scientists weren't really free to study things like consciousness and spirituality without sort of being ridiculed or pushed aside. I think we're coming out of that now into a more integrated, holistic experience of beingness and approach to being. I certainly hope that's the case. And of course, science led to many important discoveries and things that we use today. There's all kinds of developments, but as human beings, we also really need to focus on wisdom, virtue, love, compassion, inner meaning, and spiritual fulfillment. And when we don't address these aspects of life, people feel empty and disconnected. In the history of Western psychology, the focus was always on problems and on disorders. And as a counterpoint to that, new thought, personal growth, personal empowerment, self-help, began to focus on the positive aspects of being. How to cultivate trust, how to cultivate generosity and health and prosperity, how to access and embody conscious light and act with integrity. So in the history of New Thought, we have these terms like religious science, divine science, Christian science. Christian science was at one time a generic term that just applied to this approach of melding or bringing spirituality and science back together. Because life is based on spiritual principles that can be distinguished. So today there are some scientists who are studying transcendental states, and people are starting to talk about them. So what do we mean by a mystical experience? It's awareness of oneness. It's clarity about this existence. It's a state of higher consciousness and insight. In a mystical state, your sense of your personal self drops away and you feel universally connected. So we're looking at this book, The Wise Heart by Jack Kornfield, and we're on chapters 19 and 20. He says that expanded consciousness involves a startling shift of identity. Mystical experiences melt our boundaries and open our hearts to a reality beyond our limited sense of self. Through them, we reconnect to our place in the holiness of all creation. That's what a mystical experience provides and gives us, is that sense of the holiness of all creation. Now, Jack Kornfield likes to talk about certain people and give little stories and anecdotes. So he talks about Gabe, somebody he calls Gabe, who was at a 2-month-long retreat. And a couple of weeks into that retreat, here's what Gabe experienced. One day, the whole sense of himself as separate, as existing at all, dropped away. There was laughter, space, equanimity, peace. Gabe felt he had discovered the still point, the deathless in the midst of all things. Deep gratitude arose in him. He wanted everyone in the world to do this, to step beyond their fears, to discover the liberated heart. He wanted to dedicate his life to relieve suffering. Each time Gabe came to speak with me, Kornfield says, it felt like he was radiating a stream of blessings. How does that sound? Discovering the liberated heart, radiating a stream of blessings. Kornfield says that when this person re-entered the role of Gabe, his personal self, his personal identity as Gabe, he did so from a new perspective. Now he felt connected to the mystery of life, both full and empty, personal and universal. So that's a description of what it's like to have that transcendent, mystical experience. So how do these happen? Often they happen suddenly. Sometimes we just sort of accidentally happen upon a mystical experience. It's like the whole space is lit up and you see in every direction with clarity. It's like the heart and the mind suddenly expand and you transcend the boundaries of your human body. To experience this, we have to be in the receptive mode. We have to get into the receptive mode. And there are different practices, different cultures, different spiritual walks, do all kinds of things. There's drumming, shamanic drumming, chanting, ecstatic dance, vision quests, retreats. Sometimes there's natural substances involved. You can go on those kinds of retreats.
Like water?
Where?
Flavor.
In Mexico. But even going on vacation to some scenic and tranquil spot can get you out of that everyday, ordinary life so that you're open to a mystical, transcendent experience. You're in the receptive mode. And in that mode, we become fully present with our whole being. So how can we be more deliberate, more receptive? How can we do this more commonly? Well, Jack Kornfield studies Buddhism. So he gives the Buddhist practice that involves concentration. And this is training the mind to focus on the flow of creation, training the mind to focus on the flow of creation that is always happening. Creation is continually happening. So to access or practice mindfulness, one way is to become aware of imbalance and work toward balance. Now by imbalance, I mean anything that triggers an attachment. An imbalance is anything that triggers a reaction, anything that feels incomplete. And an imbalance is not bad or wrong, it's just a message. It's just something to notice. For example, sometimes we can get attached to a thought of respecting somebody, of wanting to learn from them, wanting to be around them, wanting to spend time with somebody. It's a reaction, it's an incompleteness. You can consider it an imbalance, but it's not a negative thing, it just is. But when we return to balance, we feel complete. Like maybe we do study with somebody for a time and maybe we feel complete with that. We're ready to move on. So when we have that sense of balance, we have released any attachment to those thoughts and feelings. We no longer feel triggered into a response. We're no longer having a reaction. And so what we have then is equanimity, harmony, balance. We have an evenness of mind that leads to profound inner freedom. Balance and completeness create spaciousness in the heart and in the mind. So when we release, we make space for the new. Now in the spiritual walk, in the spiritual practice, you will experience deconstruction. This is normal. This means some of your old stories and your old structures will fall apart. And this can be difficult, but it's necessary so that there's a space to rebuild. And unity, in our history, we have this term chemicalization. We don't use this term very much because it's weird, but it actually is useful because it describes that process of your life's going to get deconstructed, and then you can rebuild and you can reconstruct. Now, when I was early on in my reawakening and I was just fresh learning about new thought and things like that, I went to the Omega Center in the Hudson Valley of New York, and I went to a week-long retreat. I didn't know anything about the person. It just sounded good in the brochure. Didn't really know why I was there or what I was doing. But by Wednesday, I was sick. I was physically ill. Well, I won't go into the details, but let's just say I didn't keep down my dinner. But on Thursday, I was fine. I was able to go to the retreat again. But it was that process of, like, when you feel like, what is happening? What are these people saying? What are these words? What are these concepts? Your structure is disassembling. It's falling apart. And then, again, you can clear that away, make space, and rebuild. But deconstruction or chemicalization, that's part of the path. It's normal. So as more junk is released, as more attachment is completed, there's more space for joy and for clarity. So new levels of absorption and awareness become available. And we get into the flow state. Jack Kornfield says the flow state is when our consciousness becomes absorbed, united, one with the subject of our concentration. There's no sense of separation. You're like completely absorbed and one with your surroundings and all that you're doing and all that you are. In this state, we access deep inner insights. And the result is we can proceed through life with what he calls gentle confidence and ease. How does that sound? Proceeding through life with gentle confidence and ease. Now, this doesn't mean we won't get our feathers ruffled. Life is about opportunity. Life is about opportunity for growth and progress and awareness and learning. And often that comes with obstacles and challenges. So when we're on the spiritual path, it doesn't mean that we're not going to get disturbed. We are going to get disturbed. But maybe they won't be so dramatic. Maybe we'll be able to get through them with less drama, with less attachment, with less of the turmoil of emotion. Now, what if we could access transcendent experiences at will? I talked about that we kind of just sometimes suddenly happen upon them accidentally, but what if we could access and tap into mystical experiences anytime, anywhere, no matter what's going on in the world? Jack Kornfield says this involves radically retraining our minds, which requires steady, patient effort. And he talks about a teacher that he had who said that choosing thoughts is like choosing fruit. So if you go to pick out an apple, hopefully you're not picking out one that's moldy and decaying and rotten and maybe has bugs crawling out of it. No, hopefully you'll pick out the apple that looks nourishing, that looks nurturing. And we can do the same with our thoughts. So we can choose consciously thoughts that lead to our well-being and nourishment, just like we would pick our food, or just like hopefully we do pick our food. So we can be mindful. Focus on what we're selecting. And with practice, we can more readily and easily access the stillness, the capital S stillness, the silence, the beingness of existence. And this is what Kornfield says about the gifts of cultivating a spiritual practice. The fruit of transcending our small self is the awakening of reverence, a newfound spirit of compassion and holy interdependence. He says we can experience realms of joy and clarity in oceanic rapture and expansiveness. And for his own practice, what he's experienced, he talks about just disappearing into love-filled, radiant light for hours at a time, becoming like a combination of a laser, a fountain, and a star. And I don't know about you, hopefully it's not just me, but when I get into sometimes these mystical experiences, there's a lot of humor there. There's a lot of playfulness. There's a lot of delightfulness. The delightedness at being able to experience being a human being, having a human body, and being able to experience the joy and the wonder and the awe and just like the eternal, the infinite isness that always is, being able to be an insect, be a dolphin, be all this variety of myriad human beings that we have on the planet. I mean, that's fun. It can be fun, even through the difficult times. So there's like a bubbly effervescence that can arise. So a mystical or transcendent experience is not an end point. It's not a destination. It's not the end of a journey. It's a beginning. A mystical experience is the beginning. Because the idea is to apply the new awareness in our actions, which includes our conversations. It's not to stay there, but to come back and take action from whatever insights and creativity and solutions that have emerged. So we want to act on the change. We want to be the change. We can proceed with an open mind that's open to insight, open to intuition, open to cultivating wisdom. And Cornfield says, the real blessing appears when we can bring the experience of the transcendental to illuminate the miracle of the ordinary. From the transcendental, like celebrate and honor and illuminate the miracle of the ordinary. What does that mean? It's amazing that plants grow. It's amazing that we can go to the grocery store and there's foods from all these different countries just there available on the shelves. It's a miracle that packages get delivered. I mean, there's just so many things that happen every day. So the miracle of the ordinary, that we can even be amazed by that and celebrate the wonder and the awe and the joy. So let's have a world where everyone unfurls wings and takes flight into the mystical dimensions of mind and spirit. And that's what we're about on this journey. We're about finding our way back to divine oneness. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Shirley.
Oh, thank you.
Taking us into that mystical space.
One of my favorite things to talk about. Joy, awe, wonder, clarity. Yeah, so I'm glad I had those chapters. Thanks.
Yes.
That worked for me.
Awesome. I think that's usually when people find unity, that at some point early in the journey, they have some kind of mystical awakening, or maybe it's that brings them here, that we hear about, and you're never the same after that.
Yeah,
It does. It's like just the very structure of your internal nature changes. I love chemicalization, by the way. It's actually get really excited about it because it has given me a greater understanding of like illness and when different things happen that there a spiritual opportunity. But especially is useful when I'm teaching classes here at Unity, that when somebody is going through some kind of physical thing that's happening during the week, I can go, oh, that's one, it's about them, because I remember not to take things personally. And two, that it is that coming up, the mind coming up against these new ideas and trying to make a space for it, and the body is adjusting, and then it all comes into harmony at some point, usually.
Yeah, exactly. My teacher, Nathaniel Newby, talks about structural coupling, that we have a structural coupling to the world, and when that comes unhinged, it can be very disturbing. And it reminded me, I did have a quote from the Gospel of, you can't call it Gospel, sorry, Thomas. It's not in the Bible. Whoever wrote the Bible kept it out. But it was written around the same time about Jesus. But I want to read this. Those who seek should not stop seeking until they find. When they find, they will be disturbed. When they are disturbed, they will marvel. And that's just part of the process, right? It's just like the chemicalization that you're talking about. We seek, we find, we get disturbed. What's this? What's happening? And my structural coupling to the world is shifting. Now what do I do? And that's where we rebuild on the foundations of these teachings that we have.
If we weren't disturbed, we just keep going along in the same way we've been enculturated into thinking, right? So it's that which feels uncomfortable, which is actually like spurring us into the greater possibility.
Oh.
Like how we're feeling uncomfortable in the chapel and wanting to expand into the pyramid.
Yeah, so there's a purpose for the disruption. Is that a word?
Disruption.
Oh yeah, disruption. There's a purpose for it.
I'm all
just
for
make up
creating
some
new
new
words.
words.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think normalizing that, just embracing all of it, encompassing all of it, then when we do, even like no matter how spiritual we think we are, we're going to get upset sometimes, we're going to get triggered. And that's okay. That's okay.
Within you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.